Let us now understand how the reducer function is going to update the state. Now we already know useReducer is an alternative way of setting and managing the state. And this is how we are going to create our useReducer. So now whenever we want to update state in a component, we are going to call our dispatch function. And this dispatch function we got in return from this useReducer hook. Now, in order to dispatch an action to the reducer, inside this dispatch function, we are going to pass this action. And this action is an object which will be having information for the reducer. So, information about how the reducer should update the state. So, here inside this action, I have passed the object where I am having type as increment and payload as 5. Which means when this action is performed, accordingly, payload value will be added to our state. Now, inside this action, you can also give primitive value, but this is the convention and this is the standard which is followed by almost all the developers. And whenever you are working with complex application, we are going to always pass this object inside action. Now what reducer will be doing? Reducer will be taking current state and action together, and along with this it is going to return us the new state. And we already know whenever we are updating our state, we are simply going to re-render our component. And now if you are wondering why this reducer function is actually called as reducer, because it is going to follow the exact same idea of array reduce method, using which it is going to combine all the array elements and in return it will be generating one final value. Similarly, inside this reducer function, it will be taking current state and action as its parameter, and based on their values, it is going to generate us new updated state. And once we have that updated state, we are going to re-render our component. Now let us compare this mechanism with useStateHook. And useState is also used to manage and update the state. But this is only true for smaller application. For complex application, we always go with useReducer. Because if we start with useState, for each and every update, we have to create separate state, and also we have to write separate event handlers, and accordingly we have to pass that event handlers. Instead of doing all the stuff, we are simply going to use that useReducer mechanism, and we are going to create our projects. So inside this useState, for updating, we are going to use our setStateSetter function. Now, if we want to update our state, what we will do? Simply, we are going to pass updated value inside this setter function, and in return, it is going to return next updated state. Once we have updated state, what it will do? It is going to re-render our component. This diagram is very simple, and also useStateHook is very easy to understand. But as a beginner, useReducer might be complicated, but it is very important to understand, because for complex application, you cannot rely on useStateHook. At one point, you should use useReducer. So for that, you should have deep understanding of useReducer. Once you understand how this reducer is going to update the state, later when we start with the Redux, it will be very easy for you to understand entire mechanism and entire concept. But this use state is very simple and easy to understand, but it cannot be used for complex state management. So in that case, useReducer is our way to go.